Okay, wait.
So are we going to start every episode with the inner world, bro?
In a world where we're not doing this today, folks. Yeah, sorry, I just had to give a little teaser for you. We're back.
Good call, I guess.
This
We're
is
back
the
after
Talk-Ons.
being away for, I don't know, 10, 11 weeks, maybe longer, something like that.
Not more important. So this is the format we're going with today, folks.
Okay.
No, just kidding. Yeah. Um, we've been gone, busy and gone. A little salty, but mostly busy and gone.
Since you've been gone, I can breathe for the first time.
I'm trying to ignore this guy. Um, yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm a little rusty because we just jumped into this, but we got a few things to talk about. Going to try and keep it short and sweet for what that is relative to our usual standard. But we made a comeback. You thought we were done. We're not. The objectively correct talk-ons have returned. The comeback is real. We're here in the fourth quarter, baby. The fourth quarter.
Yeah, like 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter. What timing?
Hey, as long as there's time on the clock.
Back at this time, because of everything that's happened. Obviously, the selection has like really presented some major things going on, so we felt the need to talk about it. So and honestly, I really wanted to talk about it because once again, the babies of the NCAA are at it once again. So
The little spoiled, wimpy kitty baby whiners. They should just change their program to that. But first, introductions. Today, we have. You want to introduce yourself?
So I am Pete Iaqua today.
And I am. And we're the Talk-Ons. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
our good
Crying
old
Irish.
the Crying Irish, our good old friends Notre Dame got left out of the playoffs.
Yes.
Wee. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
You beat a
sorry.
2-loss Georgia team last season and now think that you belong in the national championship every single season. So I mean, I get it. I get to some degree because of course
You got
they're
to earn
they're
it, baby.
they're
You
well
got
their
to earn.
biggest whining, and I think this is the first point we should get on to because obviously I already know what people are saying. We're not whining because we didn't get in the playoffs. We're whining because of the way that they kicked us out the playoffs. Or something I'll always say. And the reason I wasn't surprised is because we've talked about it in previous episodes, the pre-ranked fallacy, where you think that just because you're ranked a specific way the week before that you have to be ranked relative to that the next week. That's not how college football works. Everything's changing every week. And, you know, the committee finally sat down and took a much better look and a much better approach to everything. And they realized they made the mistake. And I do think that they should have like admitted and like, look, we made a mistake because we should have been, but they were kind of watching Miami kind of grow. And I think the tipping scale for putting Miami over Notre Dame was the fact that Notre Dame and Miami finally had there's the head to head, of course, but then they also had a very similar opponent relatively around, a little bit later in the season. And Miami beat Pittsburgh, which is their common opponent. They beat them worse than Notre Dame did. And while like I know the transitive property is not a big like I'm not big on the transitive property, but obviously it's still somewhat of a measure. And I think that kind of gave
The
them the
fallback,
reason to believe,
if you
hey,
go through the level.
Miami, now that they beat Pittsburgh is bad or worse than Notre Dame did, they're probably at a similar level to Notre Dame, and they have the head-to-head. So we'll put them above. Now, I know they didn't move them that week, but then BYU lost. They had to put them side by side and compare them head-to-head, and that's just how it is. Stop. You
Yeah,
can't bank so much on the previous rank. So
it's not your rank the week before doesn't guarantee anything. It doesn't guarantee anything, even if you win. The rank you have the week before doesn't guarantee anything. I mean, the only rankings that matter, which is why I don't really understand why they bother doing rankings preseason early in the season. I mean, we've already talked about this before. It's just for good TV, just so they can say ranked teams are playing each other, just to make it more interesting to watch. But really, rankings shouldn't be made in terms of the AP and things like that until post halfway mark throughout the season, um, late in the season, and really playoff selection. I really don't know why they do playoff rankings at all. Really, the only rankings that matter in the playoff selection are the final rankings, the
Well,
final
yeah,
selection. Those are the only ones that are valid. Because one thing, BYU losing, for example, can completely change up the entire selection process because it changes week to week. And that's how this works. People think that, oh, it's a linear climb. The rankings are a linear climb and you can't move no matter what. And if you're in the top 12, in the penultimate rankings, you're guaranteed a spot. That's not how this works. It's not.
yeah,
The
and I think
rankings
the
change
real,
week to week.
I think
The rankings are re selected, every week. So let
reselected
that
every
go.
week. They really don't have much bearing the previous week before, and that's the biggest problem. Is I think people get so caught up in this belief that, oh well, if they were ranked at 12 before, they need to be ranked at 11 now after winning or whatever. And it's like this. That's not how this works. It's like the entire landscape of college football changes every single week. And like that's why I do think that like week to week rankings is just a mistake because people are going to constantly, the common viewer is going to see that ranking and think that, oh well, this team can't go down from here, this team can't go up. Oh, how do you move down if you lose a game, or if you win a game or whatever? It's like that's just not how it works. Like it's not a set in stone thing. This committee can make whatever decisions they want based on whatever criteria they put out. And yeah, I think it's a little messy, the fact that like I honestly just think that having, which sounds crazy, which maybe this is something we'll discuss, but like the one thing about the BCS is that you didn't have any human emotions to like fight back at. It's like, okay, well, these are humans that made mistakes and now they're fixing their mistakes. Whereas like the BCS, yeah, like they would have had Notre Dame ranked 12 or Miami ranked before, and it just would have stayed that way. But that's kind of the thing about the BCS is like you want to be able to make those changes when it makes sense to make those changes. And I think it made sense to make that change. Miami deserved to be in over Notre Dame. Um, it's just how it is. I mean, both
Yeah, I
both
mean,
teams barely played anybody except each other, and
when that's the only thing you have to fall back on, and I mean, we're not going to sit here and try and repeat everything that has already been said by the committee and sports media and everything. At the end of the day, I mean, they followed their criteria properly, and it led them to the decision. Notre Dame and Miami had a similar strength of record, like within 2 or 3 ranks of each other in both strength of record and strength of schedule. Miami beat their common opponent better, and Miami won the head to head. So those are the things you have to fall back on when you have the same record, same strength of schedule and strength of record, and you play each other or common opponents. You have to fall back on that. Okay, Miami was more um, impressive against Pittsburgh, common opponent, and they have the head to head. And really, the head to head is more important in this case anyway, because the transitive property, as Pete Iaqua said, is not really that set in stone, but it goes hand in hand with the head to head when you have
right.
them in the same position. Miami over Notre Dame was not the problem. Like that Miami deserved that pick, but obviously people are upset about how Alabama was treated, which is a whole other story. And the fact that they feel like maybe Notre Dame should have got in over them, and because
I think people are
BYU
more upset about the
got
Miami
knocked out.
situation because they were above Miami. Alabama had already been moved above Notre Dame the week before, and that was the committee telling everybody, like, hey, like, expect come playoff time that Bama's going to get in over Notre Dame. And so then you knew it was going to be left between Notre Dame and Miami. And then Notre Dame fans and the Notre Dame team and everybody, and apparently Pete Bavacqua were all like, oh, well, we're definitely like going to get in over Miami because they already have us above. And it's like, well, no, BYU loses now. You don't have that buffer anymore. And so now your schedules are being put together side by side. So, I just think that like I
They
said,
kind of
I think what people need to understand is that you can't bank so much on the single week in the current ranking. You just can't. And I know people are thinking, oh, well, we're not winning or we're not playing a game, so we're not winning or losing. Well, sorry, other teams are playing games, plenty of conference games and stuff while you're sitting on your butt at
right,
home as well. Because guess what? Probably had you been in a conference, you'd probably be playing in the conference championship, but you're not. And it's something we'll talk about as well. But the other teams around you changed your fate because they go to conferences. Alabama jumped you because the committee wanted to give an excuse to. It was because the fact that they jumped. Bama jumped Notre Dame, and then BYU got knocked out, and both your buffers were gone at that point. And Bama jumped because they're in a conference, and the playoff committee wanted to make sure that they got in over Notre Dame no matter what, and not punish them for losing. And then they wanted to make sure that, and then BYU lost, pulled them out of that like the buffer spot for the 11th spot, which that's something I'll mention real quick is that people whining about BYU losing their conference championship and getting punished, but they were put at the 11th seed, which you are guaranteed to lose. Like that's guaranteed to a auto bid. So that was kind of the committee telling BYU like, hey, like you're not going to get punished for losing. You're just going to lose. It's just that if you lose, an auto bid's going to take your spot, like just inherently. So you better
right.
win to make sure we can put you in. So that's the difference there. The Alabama Georgia SEC championship is a whole other thing with like, that is the question of like, okay, well, if Bama, they're not going to get punished. Well, if they lose bad enough, how punished do they like? Should they get punished? And
I will say though that it does feel somewhat weird and contradictory in a sense that you can benefit from a conference championship win, but the idea is we're not going to punish you for the loss in the conference championship, the losing team. You know what I mean? It's weird. There's a little bit of there's a good bit of
there,
inconsistencies with the committee.
so
So I will admit that.
the problem, in my opinion, with that, which is what I was actually just about to talk about, was how do you make sense of that fairly? Because it's going to be one-sided. Because the way it works is that the team ahead of you is always going to get punished in that conference championship. Alabama and Georgia, I could use as an example. Georgia loses that game to Alabama, they're dropping no matter what, because now Alabama is going to be 11-2 with 2 wins over Georgia, and Georgia is going to be 11-2 with no wins, with 2 losses under Bama. So you logically have to put Alabama above Georgia. And so Georgia, but you can't put Alabama above a 12-1 Texas Tech conference champ. You can't put them above a 12-1 or 12-1 Ohio State. Which granted Ohio State didn't get punished. If anything, like Georgia, Georgia won their conference championship, stayed at number 3. Ohio State lost and stayed above Georgia. It's like, I don't understand how you keep a 12-1 SEC champ below a 12-1 Big Ten runner-up. Doesn't really make sense to me. But
I don't really
I, I,
care.
I'll,
It was in the
I
grand scheme of the
digress.
rankings.
I digress because all that does is change your like seeding based on the teams you play. Which honestly,
Right.
they should have changed because nobody wants to see Georgia and Ole Miss. Like we have like 3 or 4 rematches in this playoff. Nobody wants to see all these rematches. But to that, if Georgia would have lost as bad as Bama did, then I feel like Georgia gets dropped even further because they got to get dropped no matter what. And that's kind of my thing. Is like Georgia loses that, they get dropped because Bama has to go. So it's like there needs to be some kind of balance found there, because if you get in there and you lose, you're not punished at all. But if you get in there and you win, and you beat the guy above you, that guy above you's got to move below you most likely, especially in this case, because they have identical records. They literally have almost identical resumes, but then Bama would have the 2 wins. So Georgia would have dropped out. And if Georgia gets blown out, I promise you they drop Georgia out of their bye, or they're going to lose they were going to lose their bye no matter what if they lose. But then they're going to lose their bye, and there's a good chance if they get beat 28-7 with -3 rushing yards, they probably drop them out of their home playoff game.
The format obviously is flawed, and that's what I wanted to talk about. But having a human committee, the problems are is that you get some bias here and there. Um, Obviously, when you got big brands like Bama and what have you, there's going to be some bias there. especially depending on who you have on the committee. If we have like athletic directors and people like that in positions like that as part of the committee, you're going to have a lot of hidden special interest in the grand scheme of things. But people ask questions about who should we have in the committee, what kind of people should make up the committee, and should we even have a committee at all at this point? Should we just come up with some, go back to a system similar to the BCS algorithmic, even AI system that will make a playoff selection, which I think you could get a pretty good approximation if you use the right metrics and give the right weights to the right metrics, which will still take the right people deciding which metrics matter. You plug that into the system, you could probably get a pretty good, close enough approximation to the best players and best teams in the country through those metrics and stat lines that it would be valid. So that's a whole nother conversation. But I think that honestly, it's because people are going to ask, okay, well, if you don't get punished for your conference championship and you don't benefit from it, if that's the stance we're taking, why even have a conference championship? What's the point? I really feel like it's starting to look like these conferences, Power Four conference setup, is not compatible with the playoff format. I really feel like we may just have to, I don't know. People talk about the super leagues, like this, the big everything being absorbed by the SEC and the Big Ten, and like having an NFC, AFC type situation for college football. That may be the answer to make the playoff more consistent.
It probably
because
will.
Power
And
Four
then,
conferences, it's not compatible, and especially because to top it off, not all conferences are created equal. And that's another reason why they got rid of the auto conference bids, because you'd have a 7-5 Duke or 8-5 Duke in an auto bid top four spot right now. If they had that auto bid thing going on.
yeah, because it was Power Four, but obviously the
Right.
ACC has been a mess this season aside from Miami, which that was also their just terrible tiebreaker.
It's
The
not
thing is, though, is
sustainable.
that I'm
I don't
sorry.
think it's sustainable.
I think combining them at this point has to be the best thing, because when you expand a playoff this
Yeah.
big and you have a team of people, like looking at this, it weeds this stuff out. It weeds out the what is it, like, it weeds out your 12-0 teams that are playing nobody, because at that point, like, I mean, you're probably going to find a way to like have a schedule where you're not really playing anybody, but if you can merge, you're going to
Notre
broaden
Dame.
the skill set and the recruiting classes and like the talent and all that you play. You're no longer going to have
Well, you're going to
Indiana
streamline it.
playing
It
only Oregon
streamlines
and
the
Ohio State.
process.
It
It
streamlines the
streamlines the
process.
process, and it prevents you have confounding variables of multiple different conferences built differently with it. That puts in the question, like, the biggest thing is, why are we playing these conference championships? Why bother? What do we benefit? Yada yada. It's like you bypass those problems when you just have two conferences like that,
Right.
two conference model. um you bypass that, because then you have um two conference championships, and the winners of those two conference championships get the top two seeds, automatic top two seeds, and then everybody else is at large.
Yeah.
You
And
dodge all of the hurdles,
I
of
want to say
multiple
this too,
conferences.
because you avoid just the massive difference. You can kind of avoid the massive difference in recruiting, like in talent, because
Yeah, the
obviously, like,
parity kind of increases.
you're still going to play. I mean, some people are still going to find ways to play different teams, play rivalries and stuff that are going to just skew their rankings. But I was doing some statistics here and some math on, and I wanted to bring Notre Dame up because I kind of wanted to use this as my reason
Yeah,
for why
let's
they
go
don't
back to
belong
Notre
in
Dame. We
why
haven't
they don't
dogged on Notre
belong in
Dame
the
enough.
playoffs no matter what. And
Our good
because I
old
wanted to
friends
compare,
Notre
so
Dame.
if you look at Notre Dame's schedule, they're 10-2, right? They win 10 straight games. Well, the
Yeah.
average recruiting rank, when you remove the two teams that they lost to, so the 10 straight wins they had, the average recruiting rank came out, and this is over the last 3 seasons of all 10 of these teams. The average recruiting rank is 58.
Yeah.
I then remove Navy just to be on the safe side because they are a massive outlier at like in the hundreds. You're still at 50. You're still at an average recruiting rank of 50. With that, that's removing the outliers and then keeping the other 10 teams, which are all, I think, ACC teams and then USC. And then you got Boise State. You have that, whereas Oklahoma, who is a top 10 or their top 10, they went 10-2, and Notre Dame would be favored over them if they played on a neutral site in the playoffs right now. And yet OU's average recruiting rank at 10-2 with their outliers. This is including their 3 worst teams, their cupcake teams. There's still 12 average recruiting ranks higher than Notre Dame. And yet you think that you belong anywhere near the playoffs where Oklahoma is on the latter half. That's 8, 9, and they're 8. They're 2 spots from the bottom, and they're 12 recruiting ranks higher. Now, guess what their average recruiting rank is when I pull out their 3 cupcake teams? 12. More than 50% higher than Notre Dame's. So, and yet everybody wants to be like, oh, well, Notre Dame looks good. I don't know if they look good. Yeah, you beat Syracuse 70-7, but Syracuse's average recruiting rank of the past 3 seasons is 59. Their seniors are from a recruiting class ranked 75th. They don't have any talent. They don't have any
playing high
talent there.
schoolers, basically.
If they're lucky enough, if Syracuse is lucky enough to have a good coaching staff one season that comes together and builds it fine, sometimes that happens, which is what happened with Boise State last season. But don't kid me and say, because I've heard Notre Dame fans make this argument, oh, well, they don't know what their opponents are going to look like the next season. That's BS. Because Boise State, oh, they may have looked good last season, but you're still looking at an average recruiting rank of 65. So the chances of them being another 12-1 team again are so low. But if you recruit someone, or if you play Georgia like they used to first time in the season, they don't do it anymore because they lost every single game except for that playoff game. When you played the good Georgia teams before the last seasons, that was their worst team they've had since 2016. You lost every time. That's why I don't want to play them. You don't want to play these good recruiting classes because you lose to them. Texas A&M, you lost to in South Bend. Yeah, Vanderbilt belonged over you because Vanderbilt's only 2 losses. They had good losses, a top 10 team, a top 15 team. But guess what? Both those losses were in Tuscaloosa and in Texas. They lost away. One of your losses, Notre Dame, to a top 10 team was in South Bend. So,
but they
that's
played
all
close,
you got. That's
they played
all
close.
You got. Oh yeah, they played close. Cool. Yeah, okay. Well, Vanderbilt's game against Texas was close. They got whooped up a bit by Alabama, but that was the point where Alabama was beating teams like Georgia and all. So
look,
they've kind of fallen off. But
and I think you've made some good points. And I'm not saying that playing close to these playoff teams shouldn't mean something. The whole quality losses thing. I don't think having an L there in the record bracket should automatically invalidate it and bar it from analysis. But here's the thing. You're talking about very early in the season, where if we take an example of like Georgia versus Bama, you saw what that game looked like between Georgia and Bama in the regular season. Then what happened in the SEC championship? The better team that developed better when it mattered the most obliterated Alabama. So the thing about it is, early in the season, everybody's still kind of figuring out who they are and developing. And I'm not saying those games don't matter, but you have to have a consistent through line as the season continues to use as a comparison to these other teams. Because we could argue, oh, we won 10 games straight in a row. We won 10 straight. Against who? We don't know if you actually developed at the same level as these other playoff teams because you didn't play anybody. We don't know if it's actually true that you are on par with that trajectory of these other teams.
I mean, yeah, you beat these teams how you should have. You beat these teams how any top 5 recruiting team should have beaten them.
What reference point are we supposed to use? Because we barely had a reference point for Indiana and Ohio State other than them playing each other in the Big Ten championship. And that doesn't mean much because neither of them had really been tested. Indiana beat Oregon. At least they can say that, but you guys are playing a worse schedule than both Indiana and Ohio State. I mean, and we're supposed to have a good reference point for how
I'd say no. See, I'd say they're relatively the same, or actually statistically, I think Indiana and Ohio State's strength of schedule might actually be lower than Notre Dame's. But the difference is that
probably because of A&M and Miami being outliers.
Indiana has the win against Oregon, and a quality win will always outweigh a quality loss. The quality losses mean nothing if you don't have a quality win to
Right.
balance it out. Because when
Yeah.
I look at Notre Dame's schedule, all I see is, oh, lost to Miami, lost to Texas A&M, not good enough to beat a ranked team. Oh, they're 10-0 against Pittsburgh, USC, Navy. Okay, USC, cool, whatever. You beat a 15 ranked USC who hasn't seen the light of day even since Lincoln Riley got there. They've been a consistent 3-4 loss,
A
5 loss
USC
team since
team, a
they've been there.
USC team that arguably probably didn't belong in the top 25 rankings. But even then, what was a one score difference
There's 10
between
point
them?
difference.
A 10-point difference between you and USC? Come on,
Yeah,
that's not
I
very
mean,
convincing. That's not convincing. It's not. And
sorry,
it's
but
like,
when I see teams up there like A&M and Georgia and all that have wins over ranked teams by 30 or more points, yeah, sure, you've got wins by 60 points, but beating
it's
up
like
on
Pete
our nation's
Iocchio.
service academies don't really make you hot stuff. So
Well,
I
and
just
here's the
don't.
thing. Look, I understand Notre Dame makes an argument for tradition. I'm not saying that tradition doesn't matter in college football. Look, Notre Dame and Navy, Notre Dame and Army, those are traditional games. But what's your excuse for the other scheduled programs throughout the
They
year?
stick with
You
the
have no.
ACC, bro. You
It's
literally
designed for success. You
you might as
design
well
your
join
schedule
a
for success,
conference.
right?
You pretty much play an ACC conference schedule, but you don't want to join the conference because you want to be able to pick Syracuse, Boston College, North Carolina State. You want to play their worst teams. You don't want to
You want to
have
pick the
end
teams you
up
want to play.
you don't want to end
Yes,
up having to play Miami, Georgia Tech, Virginia, Duke. Virginia Tech now has James Franklin. I highly doubt you'll never see them play Virginia Tech again. I just
they don't. Yeah, we talked about it a while back. I don't remember what episode it was. I think especially last season we kind of dug into it. Notre Dame, the reason that they are an ACC program but their football team is independent is because Notre Dame football is a big name brand, and in order to keep up that brand success, to keep the brand the way it is, they've remained independent so they can engineer their schedule for success. Because the reality of it is, in modern day football, Notre Dame, they're not going to consistently compete at a high level with these other elite big brand schools. Um, look, Notre Dame last
they
season.
can. That's the
Look,
problem. That's what I hate so much about this. That's why I wish Notre
yeah,
Dame would schedule a tough
I, I,
schedule
I
because they
guess they
can
could.
hang with the big boys, but they don't prove they can. I know they
Right.
can, but they don't
Well,
prove it, right?
they
I
don't want
have a
they don't
feeling
want
they
to have
can.
to earn it. They don't want
But
to have to earn it. They don't
but
want to have to
sorry,
put it on the line season to season. They
you
want
got to
to
take
they
a
want to
risk
make a cupcake schedule,
because I
and
know what
they
you're doing.
design their seasons for success.
I
Yes.
know what you're doing. You put Miami and Texas A&M, the most likely, and you can say what you want, but those are two of the three teams that are usually in top 10 recruiting. You schedule those two teams' first two games of the season. That's what you do. You schedule those two first games of the season, and you take a risk here because if you do lose them, you get put in the position you are like by the end of the season where you can stay up in the ranks because now you're still 10-2, 10 straight wins, but you've then negated the possibility to win something or you've also put yourself in this worse position because you didn't take the risk of trying to play a better team later in the season. Because yes, the recency bias of that loss will hurt you more in the end, but the recency bias of that win will help you more. That's the thing. Is like you didn't play anybody good since week 2, and because of that, you didn't really have much of a resume to show for.
Well,
You just didn't.
they manipulate their schedule. They know what they're doing, and we know what they're doing. They what they do is they pad their strength of schedule with good programs early in the season when everybody's still developing and figuring out what they are, and because they believe, hey, if we put these good programs on here, and even if we do lose, those are that will pad our strength of schedule, and um, you know, we'll have the rest of the season to pad our win loss record and blow everybody out, Navy and Syracuse and what have you, to kind of, build up that conversation late in the year. And if we win those two early games, or at least one of them, then we have the benefit of saying we beat one of those teams, and we still have an easy schedule the rest of the year to guarantee we're going to be a write in. They design their schedule to be a write in. They do. They know what they're doing. And that's exactly why they stay independent. And we've already talked about this before. They know
Yeah.
what they're doing.
But
It's Notre Dame football. They're not going to risk the brand by actually playing good competition. They pad their stats historically. They try to keep that brand image up by making sure that they have good high win seasons because they're Notre Dame football. They can't risk going 9-3, 8-4, God forbid having a losing season, which would be a lot more likely if they played in a competitive conference or had someone else make their schedule where they made it competitive. They know what they're doing. I don't feel bad. I'm not saying Notre Dame's not one of the best teams in the country, didn't belong in the playoffs per se. I'm not going to say that, but I am going to say you didn't earn your spot, and that's why you got left out. You have to earn it. You can't just be one of the top 12 teams. Part of that is earning it. Like you have to earn that spot, and you didn't earn it. You put yourself in this position by manipulating and engineering a schedule like you do. So, and now they want special treatment. Now, instead of doing what they need to do, this is the crazy part, folks. Now, instead of making the changes they need to fix their own problems, they want the committee to give them special clauses and special treatment because they're an independent and because they refuse to not be an independent so that they'll be guaranteed a spot. Well, guess what? Now you've pissed off the college football world, and these teams are freezing your scheduling because they're not going to be a part of you taking advantage of the system and playing, using them to play the system.
They're going nuclear practically. Like what are we doing? Like you're whining about everything. Like all you're doing, you look like
I don't feel
idiots
bad
in
for
my
Notre Dame,
opinion.
and they're
opted out of a bowl game.
Right.
Pete Bavak was going on there. You pissed me off, ACC. You ruined our relationship. How the hell did the ACC ruin a relationship? They didn't choose to have Miami in the playoff. The committee did that.
Nobody's on.
You're just mad. Beat Miami next time.
You're alone on this, Notre Dame. You're alone. You're not. The Notre Dame staff are not being professional, and the fan base is not being rational. Like you didn't earn your spot. Get over it. Stop scheduling Syracuse late in the season. And teams like Illinois State, every other week, and maybe you'll have a better argument.
Man, you are one of 130. I think there's 2 independent teams total. I don't remember who the second independent is. There's something like that. It's a very low number. I'd say probably 98% of the of FBS teams are in a conference. You are probably the only independent that even matters. So I don't know where you think that anybody should just, cope with you or bow to your belief in. It's just because you are a historic program and you've always been, Notre Dame's always been a good school, good football team. But I think that now that the playoff has expanded and now that we have a committee choosing this and making these big decisions, ranked, and when it comes to wins and losses, I always think ranked wins should mean more than ranked losses. Right. And obviously there's that balance there, but a ranked win means a lot more because if you can beat those teams, because if you keep showing us all you can do is lose to those top 10 teams, like nobody's gonna let you in. And sorry, but you beat Georgia last season. Notre Dame was a fantastic team last season. You beat some big dogs last season. The last season has no bearing over this season. That's the problem. Everybody wants to sit here. Oh, Notre Dame did this last season, so they got to be one of the best teams. How do we know?
Not the same team.
You have proved nothing this season to do it. You went 11-1 last season, and you had one random upset loss, and I ate crow on that one because I talked mad crap after that one, and then they came and
Notre Dame we both ate crow. Back. But we admitted that Notre Dame belonged in the playoff, and they were.
They still cheated the system because they still had a god awful schedule aside from that.
With their schedule,
but whatever.
Which was funny. That's what made it even more succulent that they got upset by Northern Illinois. But they bounced back and proved they were one of the best teams in the country, and they belonged in the playoffs. They did, and it was one of the best Notre Dame teams they've had in a long time. But here's the things, like you said, Pete Iacqua, these are not the same team. This is not the same Notre Dame team. This is a different season. And these other teams around you are not the same as they were last season. Georgia, as an example, Georgia's way better they look a lot more like a typical Kirby Smart Georgia team than they did last season. Last season was like the worst team. Well, yeah, now when it matters, of course. Last season, you played the worst Kirby Smart Georgia team since probably his first 2
It
years
was.
or
It
first
was
year.
the first 2 regular season
Because the
loss
second year we
Georgia
had the
team.
2017 championship team, so this
It
was
was
the
his
worst team. Yeah,
it
go
was
ahead.
his first. It was Georgia. It was Kirby Smart's first 2-loss regular season Georgia team since they lost 5 or 6. I think it was 5 back in uh 2016. It's the first 2-loss
But
team. So that's the
but
team you got.
not to kind of, that's in defense of the reference point, trying to use Georgia as a reference point. It doesn't work for last season because that wasn't the typical Kirby Smart Georgia. But I'm not taking away the fact that Notre Dame did go on to beat Penn State and did make it to the national title game. And I'm
You,
not
you beat it.
invalidating
No, no,
that.
no. You know, I'm gonna rant real quick. You beat a 2-loss Georgia team, the first 2-loss Georgia team since 2016, and you beat Penn State. James Franklin's never won a big game. You beat big game James. Good for you. You mean like Big James craps himself when he has to play a team that
I
is
mean, I just wanted
looks
to give,
remotely good.
I just
No,
wanted
I
to
mean that's
give them
sentiment there.
credit
Like
for what they did
Notre
last
Dame,
season.
Notre Dame without a doubt was a great team and belonged where they were,
But
but
this season is not the
that
same
doesn't have
team, and
anything
you
to do with
did
this
not
season.
earn it. You didn't earn it this season. You can't keep designing this design for success schedule, manipulate the system. This is what happens because it came back to bite you in the butt. It came back and bit you in the ass. I'm going to use the A word. Uh, it came back to bite you in the ass. And so don't be mad. You did it to yourself by remaining independent so you could manipulate the system and design your schedule for success. I mean, when you have a bubble like this with so many good teams out there, your strength of schedule is going to come back to bite you. It just is. Like at the end of the day, Miami had they had a similar strength of schedule and had the head to head. That they automatically win that argument because of that head to head fallback. Alabama, because a lot of people point out Alabama, between Notre Dame, yada yada. Alabama had way better strength of record, way better strength of schedule. I mean, definitely way better strength of schedule, if nothing. Strength of record gets complicated, but strength of schedule, Alabama had a way better strength of schedule and had ranked wins to go along with their ranked losses. You had ranked losses.
Or ranked wins, by the way.
Bama had
One,
4
one,
ranked wins.
one,
You
one
had
of them on a number 3 SEC champ currently. So
you had a losing record against ranked teams. One ranked win against an overrated USC team, let's be real, that you beat by 10 points, not convincingly, really, considering what USC truly is, despite their AP ranking. And you lost to the other two. You played close, but the thing about it is, it's like Brother Chase here said, you can't make an argument for quality losses unless you have quality wins to pin up on the board. You can't. So anyway,
right.
I guess we talked enough about Notre Dame. I think we've made our point. Cry
Sorry,
some more.
I just
Join a conference.
I mean, I'm sorry. I
That's
had to
it.
talk about them and I had to rant on them because the way they're acting right now. So that they deserve, maybe not Notre Dame fans, but the
The
state of Notre
program.
Dame, the program deserves to get
The
trash talked
state of
right
Notre
now.
Dame.
Well, like,
Indiana's just Notre Dame now.
no, I meant like
I know what
the
you meant, but it's just funny the way
but
you say it
yeah,
out.